All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is Dan Meyer, editor at RCR Wireless News. And I want to thank everyone today for joining us on this webinar, Huawei Technologies as your rural broadband solutions provider. The telecommunications industry is set for tremendous growth opportunities driven by the increased demand from consumers for services, as well as the federal government's plans to invest in furthering the reach of broadband services across the country. As one of the fastest growing companies in the telecommunications infrastructure space, Huawei Technologies is in a prime position to support those growth plans. Huawei has been tapped by a number of established players in the space, including Level 3, TELUS, Bell Canada, Clearwire, Cox, and Leap Wireless, and offers solutions based on GSM LTE, CDMA, and WiMAX, as well as other technology options. In support of its North American operations, Huawei has nearly 900 employees spread across a number of research and development facilities and regional offices, including its headquarters in Plano, Texas. This on-the-ground support, in combination with its technical expertise, puts Huawei in a position to be an excellent partner for rural broadband deployment plans. Here today to talk about those opportunities is Charlie Martin, Wireless Chief Technology Officer at Huawei Technologies USA. Charlie?
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Charlie Martin. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Wireless for Huawei Technologies USA. Today what I'll do is I'll be going through some slides with you, talk about some situations in rural broadband and some applications and solutions for those particular deployment situations in rural broadband America. On the second slide, just as a quick overview, I'll be talking about some introduction to ourselves. Huawei is fairly new to the USA overall. We came to the U.S. in 2001, and I'll talk about our progress and our situation here in the United States. I will also talk about timelines and status update for the ARRA funding. It's been pretty well documented what the original timelines and milestones were. There have been some recent changes on that. I'll also talk about our own product certification process and give you an update on that. And then I'll get into the solutions and talking about wireless and fixed broadband solutions that we offer. So where we're at today as a company, we are a private employee-owned company. We were established about 20 years ago in Shenzhen, China. Today we've grown to 87,000 employees worldwide, 43% of who are in R&D. Over 10% of our revenue is invested in R&D. And to the right-hand side here, you can see our financial progress from 2004 through 2009. And as you can see, we've been on a pretty strong upward curve. Last year, we were able to gain $23.3 billion in contract sales, of which 75% of that was outside of our domestic market in China, so it's international. And this year, our target is $30 billion in sales worldwide. Page 4, our North America presence at a glance. As I said earlier, we were established in 2001, our headquarters being here in Plano, Texas. We now have 3 offices actually in the Plano and Richardson area. We have 8 regional offices and 9 R&D centers throughout North America. And we've got a number of solutions deployed in North America by multiple customers, some of which you heard in the introduction. We've been growing pretty consistently year over year. We are now at 880 plus employees, actively recruiting and still growing. And on this page you'll see some photos of our locations, our R&D and regional offices throughout the United States. Our progress in North America on page 5, what you'll see here is we actually, even though we established ourselves in 2001, we didn't actually begin selling products here until the 2005 time frame. We mostly did R&D work here. So in 2005 you can see that we some of our first customer references were ADC, Fiber Tower, Hibernia, Atlantic. In 2006 we gained our Leap Wireless customer reference for CDMA, Exo Communications, Tech Valley, BSNL International. And then 2007, a lot of nice wins there in wireless, Altel, Metro PCS, also in optical, Tyco Communications, CTC Communications. And then moving across last year, we won a UMTS contract with both Bell Canada and TELUS in Canada. And then also scored a very nice win with Level 3 in optical. And then this year, some of the progress we've been able to show has been with Clearwire in WiMAX, with T-Mobile with broadband devices, wireless broadband devices, and with Cox Communications on CDMA. And down below, you'll see a listing of the type of products that we've been selling here for those customers. Page 6. So here is an update on the timeline, the original timeline of the BIP and BTOP, which is the Broadband Initiatives Program and the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. They're providing this funding. So the updates, for those of, my assumption, the strong assumption is that most of you on the call will understand this timeline really well. But some of the updates that just happened recently were that we were expecting that awards would be coming out in the November time frame, and what happened is there was an announcement that there would be a slight delay on that, but that would move into the December timeline. So you'll see it in the middle of the chart where the dotted blue line arrows move over to December. So the expectation now is that awards will be announced in December. And then also another update, something that just recently came out in the last 2 days, was that originally there was going to be 2 more funding allocations, this second and third NOFA, that would go out. Well, it looks like it's been announced that those 2 will be collapsed into one. The remaining funding will be awarded in one round now instead of 2, and I don't think any announcements have been made yet of when they expect that to happen, but those 2 will collapse together. So those are important updates on what's happening with the funding timelines. On page 7, our RUS listing update, we did just recently receive our Rural Development Telecommunications Program listing from RUS for WiMAX and CDMA. So those have now been approved, and we are in the process to obtain listings for the other wireless and fixed last mile and mid-mile solutions, including GSM, UMTS, DSL, GPON, and Optical. We anticipate completion of this certification to happen over the next 1 to 2 months. So I think it was important for us to get that information out there. We are new to the RUS listing program, but we are now in those listings. And then just a note at the bottom is that one thing that is important to understand is that RUS listings are recommended for BIP, but they are not required. And for BTOP, they're not required, but we are going to go ahead and proceed with certification listings anyway. On page 8, this is where we start to get into solutions discussion. And what I've shown here is kind of a pictorial of what are the broadband deployment options that you have in rural America. So kind of at the top, at the 10 o'clock position, is your wireless, your 2G and 3G wireless options such as GSM, CDMA or UMTS. And then proceeding counterclockwise, you've got options for fiber, dense wave division multiplexing or coarse wave division multiplexing that could be used for small to medium enterprise, or could be used for large enterprise. It so happens large enterprises in a rural area. And then going around, your broadband wireless access via WiMAX, and then your fixed options with DSL or with GPON to residential areas. So in our view, that's kind of like the universe of broadband options that are available, certainly what we're proceeding with. Page 9, where we talk about considerations. I think in our view, if you're looking at what you're choosing for your solution for providing that broadband capability, is that there's 6 main areas that you should consider in making your choice of those solutions. Starting at the left-hand side, ease of installation, operation, and maintenance will be very important to you. Next, common platforms for multiple technologies. You'll find that with those common platforms for multiple technologies, if you're able to satisfy different technological options for broadband within single platforms, you'll find some nice savings there for yourselves. Also, or what we call rack and stack pay-as-you-grow type of capacity with rural America, you may have all kinds of deployment scenarios. Some may be larger, some may be smaller, but certainly as you grow your business, you want this capability to while you're adding capacity to linearly pay for that capacity as you grow. Energy efficient certainly is a big thing. Green initiatives are very large around the world. You'll want to look at energy efficiency for yourselves as part of containing your own operational costs, and also doing your part as for corporate responsibility and social responsibility. And then integration of many capabilities into space-effective packaging will also be big. As we move forward, at least at Huawei, what we found is that with the growing computing capabilities and miniaturization of computing capabilities, is that we can pack more and more capabilities into much smaller packaging, which has a lot of benefits for an operator. And then lastly, to the right-hand side, optimize coverage and reach. This is really important. Unlike urban America, where you can reach many, which has a high teledensity, where you can reach many users with minimal reach, in the rural areas, you're going to really have to look at optimized coverage and reach to cover your customers as cost effectively as possible. So these are what we think are the main solutions capabilities to consider when maximizing this value versus total cost equation in choosing your solution. Page 10. These are some of the challenges for fixed broadband rural coverage, and this is a simplified view, but the issue you've got out in rural coverage is obviously, as we just discussed, lower subscriber density. Also, the issue with longer copper pair loops that you're going to have to use to reach those consumers, and also widely separated service areas. You may have areas where you have many small towns, say on the outside of an urban area or a metropolitan area, but they have separation between them to cover them all. You'll have this separation. You'll want to have some way of reaching them all cost effectively. So in the pictorial, it basically shows households with the high teledensity where you've got access points out there for fixed coverage. That's the situation for urban and suburban. And then to the right side with the rural area, you kind of see the illustration where the houses are much more separated and more difficult to cover with your access points. So this is a solution that we talk about with a unified copper and fiber access platform. If you were to provide fixed broadband coverage, we have a solution in which you can provide DSL access, but at the same time, the same platform also is fiber to the premise ready. So it will natively be able to give you both DSL and fiber to the premise. You can leverage GPON to extend your coverage. You can migrate your, if you're servicing people with DSL, then you can migrate them from DSL to fiber using that same platform. And because it's a single platform, you're going to get these benefits of reduced OpEx and reduced CapEx. Single platform for both residential and business access, and then obviously, because it's a single platform, reduced training and things like that. So this is a nice solution here in which you're able to offer copper or fiber and migration from copper to fiber. In terms of wireless now, the next page, page 12, we talk about challenges for wireless broadband rural coverage. In effect, they're very similar still. You still have the teledensity issue that you're dealing with. So, lower subscriber density, widely separated service areas. In terms of business, there's different opportunities out here with wireless. You can do, as well as your typical retail case that everybody thinks of, you can do wholesale and roaming as well with wireless. So on the left-hand side, I show the high teledensity with sites that are lower and more closely spaced to handle your coverage, which is a typical situation where you become more capacity limited than coverage limited with wireless. And on the right-hand side with rural area, what I show is taller towers, more widely separated, greater coverage. You want to do that to be able to have your most cost-effective solution for that rural area. So that kind of wireless deployment is different than an urban or suburban deployment. And solution 2 on page 13, similar to what we talked about on the broadband access side, is this wireless solution in which we can host in a very small cabinet size multiple technologies. So in this particular solution, you've got common equipment, the cabinet, the power distribution. You can either go indoor or outdoor. You could put it outside on a pad, or you could put it inside a shelter. It's highly miniaturized, and it's got basically different personalities of what we call broadband, or BBUs, or baseband units, I'm sorry, that'll handle any kind of wireless capability, GSM, UMTS, CDMA, WiMAX, eventually LTE, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also have these remote radio heads, this distributed radio architecture that have high power, and they connect to the radio units down below the baseband units via fiber. So you can really, there's long reach, you can place them very flexibly around your site. And then what's nice about this too is that for say a wholesale type of situation, wholesale or roaming, you could offer GSM roaming, or you could offer UMTS roaming, or CDMA or WiMAX roaming, all within the same cabinet. So it's a nice solution for that type of business situation or opportunity that you may want to pursue. Page 14, we talk about optical transport for the edge. And here this is kind of a simplified network diagram. We're showing 3 of our platforms that will be going through certification. Our OSN 1800-1, our 1800-2, and our OSN 3800. And we've kind of showed some deployment cases here where, to the top-hand side, we're using our OSN 1800-1 that's got native fast Ethernet and gig Ethernet capability, and using that for backhauling traffic from your base stations. That's a very slim, small sized, very total cost of ownership effective type of a piece of equipment for doing that. Down below we show the OSN 1800-2, and that right there is actually being used in that scenario that I discussed earlier, where you're wanting to provide DSL capability and fiber at the same time. In this particular case, it's backhauling traffic from your DSLAMs, but also natively inside it, it handles GPON extension. So, so with this kind of situation, you can offer your DSL type of services, but also GPON services, and that's built into the equipment. And then on our OSN 3800, that's more of the mid-mile type of solution, where in this case we're showing using coarse wave division multiplexing for handling that traffic coming back from the 1800-1, and this OSN 3800 could be hosted inside your central office. Then on page 15, we also talk about core network flexibility. So, for example, if you're offering wireless broadband service, there is a core network that's attached to that. It's not just a base station. It also has a core network. But in our view, you should try to find certain characteristics in that core network that will give you, again, the best cost-effective solution for yourself. So one of the considerations we think is really important is an all-IP architecture in the core. Everything is moving to IP. There are fundamental, undeniable facts about IP, about why that's going to lead to your best overall capacity and cost in the future. And any wireless or with that type of architecture supporting that, you can do any kind of wireless or fixed access network support. You can offer very flat and flexible networking, and you can also do things that are very interesting to do and beneficial to do, such as mesh connectivity. Also, considerations in that core network are efficiency. So some of the things that we're showing here, things that we can do are, for example, MSCE pooling across multiple MSCEs that could really help you with handling traffic, traffic profile that changes during the day, from a geography standpoint, and also virtualized MSCEs, where you've got a single MSCE, but you're partitioning that MSCE, switch, the mobile switching center, to look like multiple, actually separate MSCEs that also provide you some nice deployment options. And then the other thing is to consider is operational efficiency. You've always got to consider your costs. So with ourselves, with our core network solutions, we're always looking at things like centralized management, flexible backhaul and transport support, and again, unified hardware and software platforms that give you the most flexibility, most capability, most bang for the buck, and value in what you're buying. In this particular situation at the left-hand side, the diagram that I'm showing is specifically our soft switch and media gateway solution. We're showing you a city A, a city B, a city C. These could be small cities separated. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for example. We've got a very large rural, number of rural communities around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and this would be a nice solution where you could have multiple rural cities, interconnecting them all with the media gateway being distributed to each of those cities, but then having a centralized MSC, and then you're controlling the whole network from one location, city A. All right? So that's another consideration if you're buying, for example, a wireless solution. Page 16, do you want to talk about this as well? We offer complete service support, engineering services, 24/7 TAC, hardware, customer training. As I said, our North America headquarters is here in Texas. So is our services support. So our TAC center is right here in Richardson, Texas. We've got 24/7 help desk support, web-based support, remote access, on-site. That's the top right hand of the screen. And down below, customer training. Also, our training is done here as well. So certainly in our building here in Plano, or one in Richardson, we both have training centers in both of those. We've got labs that support those, so when we train people, we can also bring them in and show them the equipment and how that works. We've got modularized training systems and web-based training as well. On engineering services, we do network planning and optimization. We do the EF&I, project management, and we have a complete portfolio of EF&I partners in the U.S. that we've used very successfully with our customers that we have today. And then on hardware services, we offer hardware repair, return and replacement, logistics and partner support, U.S. spares, distribution points and delivery, and then inventory and repair as well. So this is an important part here to consider as well. And then coming up here as we're getting towards the end, for more information, we've on page 17, we've given you our contact information to find out more information on the web, www.huawei.com/broadbandstimulus, our email, broadbandexpress@huawei.com, and our phone number, 972-769-3500. And that is pretty much come up to the end of the webinar. So for questions, please use the questions function when you go to web control panel. And then after this webinar is delivered, the slides and recording of the webinar will be available at www.rcrwireless.com/Huawei.
Great. Well, thank you, Charlie, so much for the presentation. Again, as Charlie mentioned, if anybody has any questions for Charlie or for Huawei, you can use the questions function on your GoToWebinar control panel. And while we wait for those to come in, Charlie, I just had one question for you. Earlier on, you kind of mentioned you showed a timeline for funding for rural deployment for broadband services. How important is that? I mean, should companies, should carriers be concerned about getting this done fairly quickly? What's kind of the rush quotient, I guess, for getting on this?
I think, I'm sorry, I was just answering the question. I realized that I was muted.
That's okay, yeah.
I think it is really important what you said about urgency, mostly because, well, certainly the first NOFA has been made, the funding allocation was made, the applications all went in, there was a huge number of applications that went in, and the awards will be made here, you know, from our latest news in the December time frame. But since they've also made this notification in the last 2 days that the second and the third NOFAs are going to be combined into one now, that means there's one more drop of funding in this program that originally was slated to be, all of it could be completed by September of 2010. We don't know yet, you know, what the information is on the dates of that next NOFA is, but I think everybody's been notified out there publicly that there will be one more funding allocation.
Gotcha, great. Well, like we said earlier, if anybody has any questions, you can use the questions function on your GoToWebinar control panel. And it looks like we might have a few in there now, so I'll go ahead and let Charlie take over answering some of those questions.
Okay. Let's see, the questions are popping in here as I'm watching. One of the questions was, with almost the same product category as other vendors in the USA, how do you differentiate your strength in your engineering teams? I think we feel very strongly that we can differentiate ourselves in our engineering teams. I think mostly because Huawei as a company has been building solutions for customers all over the world, and we feel that we can bring a lot of experience from very, very widely varying deployment scenarios that they're very applicable to rural USA. So because of those capabilities and strong training with our engineering teams who really understand how those capabilities can be applied to rural USA, I think we can strongly differentiate ourselves there. So that was question one. Okay. There was another question, is that will this be extensible to smart grid? That's a very good question. So I'm not exactly sure what the total context of that is, but if you look at what's happening with smart grid today, for people who aren't aware of what's going on with the electrical grid, our view is that the electrical grid is kind of like it's a distribution network without any intelligence to it. It's completely what you would call bearer plane. Electricity and current is bearer plane, and you've got to go ahead and add something to it called the control plane. The control plane, which gives you ability to finally control what's going on with that electricity, and also the feedback loops to monitor what's going on with your network, all the way from your smart meter back to your distribution networks, back to your long-distance transport of electricity. So, you know, when you say will it be extensible, for sure, the networking concepts that already exist within these solutions today are very applicable to smart grid. Okay. Next question. The question was, what about the future of LTE versus WiMAX? And I've actually spoken on this a number of times this year and even last year. Do they compete or complement? In our view today, they complement. We have a large number of WiMAX deployments all over the world. I don't remember what the latest number is, but I believe it's in excess of 34 WiMAX deployments today. Today with WiMAX, it's what we've seen in those other countries and geographies outside of the U.S. has very much been that of supplying two things, basic broadband and voice capabilities. So the whole digital divide type of situation where WiMAX has been very successful for us in deploying to that. And at the same time, however, obviously we're working with Clearwire today, which is the leading largest deployment of WiMAX in the world today, and I would say that they've got more advanced ideas about what they can use WiMAX for. So you know, for us, we haven't seen a situation where, you know, it's one or the other, we've seen, for us, it's complementary. What we've seen with the vast majority of 3G operators, the 3G operators are very strongly choosing LTE. In general, there may be some isolated situations where some operators are not, but it's very much strongly going towards LTE for 3G operators, whereas new entrants or such as what we talked about, new entrants in different markets that are competing to provide basic broadband and voice, they're not really competing on the same type of value chain and value situation and what you're offering to your end users.
Yeah, and that's a really good point about that, because I think a lot of people are trying to pit those two together against each other, but like you said, Charlie, it's they're kind of each serve a specific purpose. So, and again, like we said before, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to use the questions function on the GoToWebinar control panel. And if we can't get to everyone's questions, we can try to, after the webinar, to also respond to some questions as well. But again, use the questions function on the GoToWebinar control panel.
Next question. This is a very straightforward one. What's the definition for GPON? GPON stands for Gigabit Passive Optical Network. So that's your fiber to your home or fiber to your premise solution that is available today from different operators. Let's see. Next question. Fiber to the home or fiber to the premise, versus DSL versus wireless. Which will be the big winners for us? I think that's an interesting question. I think the answer really is not a one-size-fits-all type of answer. It really depends on your market. I think you really got to look at your situation of where you're trying to deploy in. For example, if you're a wireless, if you're going to do wireless, obviously you have to have spectrum, okay? And that spectrum is generally offered on a licensed basis, which means licensed against specific territories. And so, with wireless, the great thing about wireless, of course, is the last mile part. You can do that wirelessly. You don't have to lay down copper or fiber for that part, so that's the wonderful thing about the wireless. However, at the same time, you may have situations where, because of it really depends on where you're trying to provide service. What if you have, for example, a situation where you've got multiples of rural towns, you've got some kind of centralization around there. You can do some kind of centralization. You have access to getting right-of-way for fiber and DSL, and then you can offer fiber and DSL. And the great thing about that is that, with fiber and DSL, because that is fixed and that's offered over distribution, basically copper or optical transmission lines, the great thing about that is you've got, it's very, very strong against things like interference. You get very high throughputs for DSL and fiber to the curb or fiber to the home, and you can offer dedicated bandwidth to a user. Whereas with wireless bandwidth is shared. So if you've got wireless deployed and you've got multiple users underneath there, the amount of bandwidth they will get will depend on how much each of them is using at a given time within that cell site, and also their distance from the cell site, because the laws of physics are what they are. And the farther you get from a cell site or the farther you get from a CO, it doesn't matter if you're fixed or wireless, the less you will get in terms of throughput and bandwidth. So it really depends on your situation. Next question. Is all the equipment made by Huawei? The answer on this is that we do have a very strong portfolio. We do, certainly at a system level, or at the highest level, we do make the vast majority of our equipment. But we're always interested in looking for partnerships where it makes sense. We are not above, deciding to use a partner to build equipment for us, and whether we OEM that or use some other model for cooperation is up to, it depends again on the type of solution and also what our partner would be looking for. So no, the answer is most of it is made by us, but it doesn't have to be, and it's not all made by us. Okay, we're still watching the questions coming in here.
And again, for anyone who wants to ask a question, please feel free to use the questions function on the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll probably have about 15 more minutes left here, so we'll get to as many as we can, and any that are left over we'll try to answer as well after the webinar. But like I said, feel free to use the questions function on the GoToWebinar control panel for any more questions for Charlie.
Okay, here's another question. The question we had to do with strategic partners. Do we have a strategic partner or integration partner programs, and how do you get more information on those? We do. We have begun doing that. And if you just call the information or that we've listed on page 17, for example, 972-769-3500, you'll be routed to the right person. We have a business development function and a partnering function. So the answer is yes. We do partnering, and that's how you can reach us. There was another question. Are you planning to come up to any new telecommunication or wireless expo in the U.S.? The answer is we do quite a bit of participation in industry associations, trade association events. We go to CTI every year. We went to, we're at 4G World. We participate in very strong participants in 3G Americas and the CDG. We have been going to other venues as well, for example, World Economic Forum to talk about things like smart grid. So we do have a number of events that we do, femtocell events, LTE events. So we're still looking at other events and as to whether how should we be participating in those, whether it's speakers, panelists, or showing our equipment.
But regardless, there's always a good chance to find someone from Huawei at one of those large trade show events, it seems like.
Yes, certainly at CTIA we always have a booth.
Yeah.
So if you just look at the program guides, you'll find us at our booth. For some of the other events, you can look at again, looking at the program. If we are on there as a speaker or as a panelist or if we're a sponsor, you can find our contact information through that.
And again, all the contact information for Charlie and Huawei are also on the presentation here. And again, for those who are joining us, there will be the slides and a recording of this will be available at the www.rcrwireless.com/Huawei site 24 hours after the webinar. And again, for those with questions, please feel free to send them in to us now on your questions function on the GoToWebinar control panel.
Right. And then here's another question, and this is a very good question. Why would this plan finance a Chinese company? So I got a very direct answer to that, which is Huawei Technologies USA is a U.S. corporation. We are not, when you're calling us here in Texas, you're talking to a U.S. company. We are local. We won a Dallas Business Council Award just recently for fastest growing local company. We are mostly U.S. employees here. and then we will be growing into more facilities here in Texas next year. And then I think the other thing you need to understand is that the vast majority of telecommunications providers are global companies nowadays. So it's some of the other North American vendors here are very strongly have manufacturing facilities and software development, and also businesses over in China and Japan and Korea and Europe and Asia and everything. So that would be the answer to that question.
And like you said earlier, Charlie, too, you guys have nearly 900 employees right now in the U.S. in the R&D and also in other facilities here. So pretty strong presence in the North American market.
Exactly. And we'll continue to grow as well. That is our plan, is to continue to grow and to hire U.S. citizens. So we're still looking at the questions here. There was a question, can you please elaborate on a multi-technology based solution over SATCOM? Can I package in a small footprint? So again, I'm trying to, understand the context of that question. So when you say over SATCOM, I'm assuming that what you really mean is satellite, in satellite spectrum. And so we don't have that today, but it's certainly something that we could do with the way that we do packaging and with our architecture. With broadband, we could easily put SATCOM capabilities in our base station. The other possible, answer to that question is that I'm not sure that perhaps the question had to do with satellite backhaul for the base station. Okay. And so the answer on that is that yes, we could do it, and we could do it within that small package. Okay.
And Charlie, also earlier you were speaking about the different technology solutions for rural companies to deploy, whether LTE or WiMAX. That also kind of depends on what kind of spectrum that those companies hold too, because it does seem like right now that certain spectrum bands are kind of targeting more towards maybe a WiMAX infrastructure as opposed to an LTE-based infrastructure. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's definitely correct. I mean, if you look at WiMAX was built in the early days to support specific spectrum allocations, and those spectrum allocations led themselves to TDD, time division duplexing solutions. They had lent themselves to certain types of bands such as a 2.5 or 3.5 or 2.3 gigahertz. And so if you look at the way that the spectrum allocations were done and how WiMAX was built, you have to tailor it to that. Whereas with LTE, LTE is mostly today tailored around FDD, so frequency division duplexing, which is by far the majority of the type of spectrum that 3G operators, 2G and 3G operators work with today in terms of GSM, UMTS, CDMA, EVDO, etc. So that is another consideration, which is that today WiMAX is mostly playing in TDD, LTE mostly in FDD, but certainly LTE is also going to address the TDD situation as well.
Gotcha. And we have probably about 5 minutes left for the webinar. So again, if people have some questions, please feel free to use the question function on the GoToWebinar control panel. I think we might have time for just maybe a couple of more questions for today. And again, the presentation and the recording of this will be available 24 hours after this, so tomorrow about this time, at the www.rcrwireless.com/Huawei site. So again, we'll try to get to a couple more questions today.
Sure. Here's another one. Can your equipment support media services in terms of quality and latency? And the answer on that is yes. Just some background there for people on the call. With media services, depending on the type of media we're talking about, you'll have different requirements for quality and latency. For example, time-sensitive applications such as voice, voice over IP, video telephony. For example, you're doing voice and video at the same time, or it's two-way communications, very time-sensitive. Also, other video applications, you'll need a very high capability, or a very strong capability to service latency and quality in terms of that. Whereas some other services, for example, web browsing or things like that, you could have a lower level of quality and latency that you can afford to give. So, you know, our solutions for that, again, IP-based. We're IP-based on everything. Our base stations, our optical gear, our network gear, our core networks, broadband access is all IP-based. So uses IP-based QoS capabilities is already built in. Also, even in the wireless, the link itself has quality of service built into that. And then in our core networking platforms, we support deep packet inspection and PCRF as well. So the answer on that is yes. Take a look at some more of the questions here.
Yeah, I think we probably have time for maybe one more question before the hour is up.
Okay. Does our base station support LTE? The answer is yes, very strongly so, all the way. As I spoke earlier, we already support. We have something we call single RAN. Okay, that's our kind of our moniker about our fourth generation base station. We brought this base station out. It originally supported WiMAX, so it was already supporting OFDM MIMO based interface technologies. And of course, WiMAX and LTE are both OFDM MIMO based. So we launched that fourth generation base station last year. It's already being sold to our customers for 3G here in the U.S. and for WiMAX, and definitely is going to be the architecture that we will use for LTE as well. So that's the answer to that question. And I think that's it.
Great. Well, again, Charlie, I'd like to thank you again. Thanks, Charlie and Huawei, for providing the information today. Again, for the rural providers out there who are looking to take advantage of the expansion of broadband in rural America. Again, Charlie, thanks so much for the time. And again, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be available starting tomorrow at the www.rcrwireless.com/Huawei site. And on there, there'll be information for getting in contact with Charlie or anyone over at Huawei for more questions and information. And again, I know we still have lots of questions left, and we will try to get to those if we can offline. But again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today on this webinar. And again, thank Huawei and Charlie Martin for their information.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.